Close to them.
That's weird. We're not talking to anyone.
Hi, my name is Danielle Salovich. I'm a fourth-year medical student at Robert Wood Johnson Medical School in New Jersey, and I'm also the Vice President of Internal Affairs for the American Medical Student Association. I'm here with a diverse panel of medical students. I know from our last session that we had a few questions that came in that we were not able to get to, and for that we actually were lucky enough to have Jeff and Caroline stay with us for another session to answer some of those questions. I'm going to turn it over to the panel. The first question is just going to be, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you went to undergrad, where you are now in medical school, and if you were not able to practice medicine, what else would you do?
My name is Aubrey Wynn, and I graduated from UC Davis in 2008. I went to Sacramento State partly as well and did some community college work. Now I'm a first year at Loma Linda, and if I were not doing medicine, I probably would go into neuroscience and look at doing research, doing a PhD in that route, but I'm very happy where I am.
Hi, my name is Jenny Fung. I graduated from UC Irvine in 2008. I transferred to UC Irvine from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I am currently a first-year medical student at UC Davis.
Hi,
Sorry.
sorry.
It's okay.
And if I didn't go into medicine, I'd go into education.
Nice.
My name is Jeff. I'm a second-year med student at Stanford. I also graduated from Stanford in 2008, where I majored in bio. From Chicago originally, and if I wasn't doing medicine, I would be probably performing music somewhere.
My name is Carolyn Black. I'm a second-year student at UC Davis. I'm in the Physician Scientist Training Program. I went to the University of Maryland, Baltimore County, graduated, did 2 years at the NIH, and if I couldn't do my MD or my PhD, I think I would do journalism.
My name is Corey Lay. I did my undergrad at UC Davis, and I'm currently a first-year medical student at the Uniformed Services University. And if I couldn't have done my MD, I was an engineer. I would do engineering.
Very nice. Okay, so let's open up the panel with a general question about why you chose your medical school. So we all know that there's many medical schools out there, and you've probably all interviewed at quite a few, but what made you choose to go to your school? Aubrey.
For me, it was definitely a combination of the school's values, but also some family history. A lot of my family has gone there, and ultimately that ended up being something kind of special to me. So that was one reason, and also I like their emphasis on clinical care. I've done research, but it's definitely not something I probably want to go into, and I really like Loma Linda's emphasis on the clinical care and kind of the whole person idea. They're a religious institution, but they have a lot of different people there with a lot of different religious beliefs, and so it's been an interesting and very fulfilling place to be at right now. So for me, it was a combination of those things, and also that I wanted to stay in California, and my family's here. So,
I chose UC Davis because, one, during interview, I got the impression that the classmates were really supportive of each other, and I didn't want to go into a competitive environment. I also really found the student-run clinics interesting. UC Davis has 7 student-run clinics that serve different populations in Sacramento, and so I could tell that UC Davis was very community-oriented, and they cared about equalizing health disparities.
I guess for me, it came down between Stanford and 2 other schools, one in Chicago and one in New York. So location was a big factor in that, and I had spent my undergrad at Stanford, so I knew that I would be happy there because the weather is perfect there. And I also really appreciated the huge strength that Stanford has in its research faculty, and I really wanted to be able to continue doing the type of research that I wanted to do.
So for me, there's only about 50 MD PhD programs in the country, and I had some pretty specific research goals. So I narrowed it down to about 15 schools that I really liked, and UC Davis came out on top. But otherwise, I would have picked, based on where I wanted to live, the weather, things like that.
So I'm actually at USIS, which is the only military medical school. So I picked USIS because the previous panelist mentioned, it's a lot about camaraderie at USIS. I mean, it's big. It's a military. We look after each other, and it's just that kind of culture. And I really liked it there.
Okay. So one of the questions from our pre-medical members is in regards to foreign study. Whether or not as a pre-medical student or as a medical student, you've either taken time off and studied abroad, or if you see that as coming up in your years of medical school.
I would absolutely recommend it. I didn't know if it would be possible, and it was a little bit of a risk because I had to break up some of my basic sciences in between, right in the middle of the year. But it turned out fine. I got into medical school, so it wasn't that bad. I spent 1 year in England, and it was fantastic. I got to travel around, and but more importantly than just being able to travel, it was experiencing a different culture. And I really didn't realize how different England is from the US. They speak English, but it's still very different. And so I would recommend it. I would like to still incorporate some international work in my career. I just joined the Navy through the HPSP scholarship program, and so that's one way in which I'm hoping to incorporate more international work in my career. So if you're at all interested in studying abroad, please go for it.
Very nice. Jenny?
I did not ever study abroad as an undergrad. I wish I had, but it was hard with priorities and timing. You can't do everything. I did do a medical mission to Vietnam as an undergrad, so I did have international experience, and I still would definitely love to do mission work in medical school and after medical school, but I never studied abroad.
Yeah, I also had never studied abroad. I was able to spend a quarter in Monterey at Hopkins Marine Station, which is a marine station that Stanford runs a few hundred miles south of Palo Alto. But besides that, I never had the opportunity to go abroad. I would say if you don't have the chance to go abroad during your undergraduate studies, you definitely do have the opportunity to do so in medical school, especially during your summers. And a lot of med schools have funding available for you to do that.
I did research abroad, and this is just my general impression, but I feel like a lot of UC Davis students, at least in my class, have done some sort of international experience before they came here, and then they have a strong interest in it. So we have a pretty thriving group of students that go to Nicaragua, to Kenya, to a whole bunch of different places to do either summertime trips or short 2-week trips over breaks.
I never studied abroad during my undergrad years, but I do look forward to it. I know USIS definitely does some humanitarian work, and after residency, the military has bases all over the world, and I'm allowed to practice medicine at all of them. I'd love for a chance to go to Korea or Germany. I mean, that'd be a lot of fun, and I could keep my medical skills up, hopefully.
Nice. Okay. So another question is, how have your plans as a future physician changed from the moment you decided, I want to pursue medicine, whenever that was for you, to throughout the application process, to now you're actually in medical school? Has it changed? Has it stayed the same? And if so, how?
That's a good question. I have wanted to do medicine for a long time, so it has changed in various ways throughout the years. I've wanted to do it since I was 12, and so ultimately, it hasn't changed radically, but small things do change. My interest in different specialties has changed, and also kind of my emphasis on how I want to live my life as a physician, and practicing a balanced lifestyle throughout pre-med is difficult, but it's also difficult in medical school, and I know it's going to be difficult as a physician. So trying to be a good example now is something that I'm working on that. Definitely.
I was pretty politically active as an undergrad, and I thought, when I was asked the question during my interview, what kind of physician will you be in 10 years? Just a general, what kind of physician? And I thought I'd be a politically active physician, like in the American Medical Association, changing policy. And And as I've entered since medical started, I realized I am not such a big picture person. Changing policy is great, but I don't know if I want all that power. I see myself working more in community clinics and affecting smaller communities. And I still don't know what type of physician I want to be, and that's always changing.
Yeah, sorry. I think going into the application process, I knew that I wanted to be a physician. I had no idea what kind of physician I wanted to be. And I would say being in medical school right now and being able to work with patients one-on-one, I've only gotten more and more excited about being a physician. I think I change my mind like every other week as far as what kind of doctor I want to be, and it's usually based on like someone who I've run into or talked to recently who really inspired me and got me excited about something. But I would say a word of advice is just to be very, very open-minded and not narrow yourself into one area of medicine. You're going to have a lot of new experiences once you're in medical school, and you should be able to let those experiences guide you to what kind of physician you want to become.
Yeah, that's kind of a difficult question for me, because if I'm going to be totally honest, I think it was just a gut feeling kind of decision. Like, I'm sure during the application process, I came up with a lot of really good reasons why they should let me be a physician. But yeah, just between all of us, couple thousand listeners and the panel, yeah, I just blind instinct.
So I think I might be a little different because I actually wasn't too interested in medicine until maybe my third or fourth year when I actually started looking at the application. I wasn't a biochemical engineer, so I was more interested in that during the beginning of my undergrad. But I think after I saw how much medicine is used in general, I definitely wanted to apply to medical school, and I had some clinical experience. I signed up for it once I thought about it, and I did like it a lot. I think once I actually got into medical school, it actually reinforced my desire to be a doctor, because after I get the opportunity to talk to patients, and it's rewarding in a way. They tell you their problems, and you listen, and there's just a lot of stories out there.
Very nice. This question is specifically for Carolyn. Our viewers want to know, what is it like to be in a joint degree program, in an MD, PhD program? What is the layout? Do you feel any different from your colleagues that are just in a regular MD program?
Okay, at UC Davis, it's 2 years of medical school, so you go and get all of your classes out of the way. And then we go for about 4 years of PhD work, depending on how long your PhD takes you. And then you finish the final 2 years of your clinical work back with the medical school. And so far, I mean, I'm only in my second year, but I don't feel that different from any of my other medical school colleagues, other than we just all are pretty aware that I'm going to be here a lot longer than the rest of them. But yeah, I don't really feel like I stand out too much in the class at this point.
A follow-up question is, are you at all worried that you'll have your first 2 years of studies and then go on to pursue your research and then come back to interact with patients? Do you think that there's a loss of knowledge between that time at all?
Yeah, I am really worried about that. I have nothing comforting to say about it, though. Hopefully I'll make it work out.
Okay. Except that numerous people have done it before you, right?
Numerous people have done it before me, and the program is working all the time to try and change things and ease that transition. So we'll see. By the time I get there, there's probably going to be a really good system set up, and I'm hoping.
Very good. Okay. One of the things that you've all touched on is the difficulties and the time requirements it is to be a medical student. What do you do? How do you make time for things that you find fun? How do you make time to stay sane and to stay yourself as an individual when you have these rigorous schedules?
I think it's always a work in progress, but I have gotten to a point where I'm pretty comfortable with my time for myself, my family, and my studies. I have to schedule it in very distinctly. My weeks are regimented in the sense that I go to bed early, get up really early. I try to keep Saturdays as kind of my mental health day. So I will study very hard during the week with the goal of taking off Friday evening and Saturday. And that is very rewarding for me. And I know for some people that's a religious conviction, and that can also just be something you want to do for yourself. And I would recommend trying to set aside good blocks of time that you can look forward to where you're not studying and you can let your mind relax and you can be social and maybe just even take a nap. So.
Well, I think your wellness is really up to you. Medical school is difficult and challenging, and you have a lot to study for, but it doesn't take up all your time if you don't let it. I mean, you don't overstudy. There's no point in overstudying. So I study like 2 to 3 hours a day, which, that's 24 hours in a day is what you do with it. If you feel like you don't have enough time for yourself, look at what you're spending your time on. Like, is Facebook as, productive to your mental health as, working out and something? So that's just prioritizing and knowing that there's 24 hours in a day and there's 7 days in a week. Everything's doable.
Yeah, I would say, so in my curriculum, we have an exam about every 3 to 4 weeks. And during those last few days leading up to the exam, studying will pretty much take my life over. But the rest of the time, I think it's actually not that hard to try to maintain a balanced life. I think you have to realize that there's just no way that you could possibly master all of the material, 100%. And it's just being able to get as much stuff in as you can while being able to get enough sleep or to eat healthy or to exercise or to maintain a relationship. And I think you have to realize also that those other parts of your life are very, very important to how well you'll actually do in school itself too. I think the happier you are, the more efficiently you can end up studying.
Try going to a pass-fail school. That's really my advice. And even if they're like, oh, we have like honors and high pass and then regular pass, you don't want that. Just go to a pass-fail school and then don't stress about it. Like, they'll set the pass so that you are learning enough of the material that you're going to do well on boards and you're going to do well on the wards, and then you'll know that you can let the rest of it go and have a life. And there will be like 5 days before your exam where things are going to be absolutely insane for you, and then the rest of the time you're just going to be studying like a normal person, and that's your day job, and then you find some balance within that.
Well, I'm only a first year, so can't comment on everything, but I feel like a slacker next to the panelist next to me. And if you want to play StarCraft 2, I'm up for that anytime. But I did change my habits in general. With medical school, you got to find something that works for you. I mean, I never set foot in class when I was an engineer. Like the last quarter, I think I went to 2 classes in the exams. But I go to class every day now. I definitely study a bit every day. It definitely helps, but you don't have to study every day if you don't feel like it. You find something that works for you and you stick with it. Don't worry about what other people are doing. You'll find time to balance it. And if you want to study all day, study all day. No one's going to stop you, that's for sure.
Okay. One of the questions, one of the difficulties of being pre-med, especially if you're at a large campus, myself, I went to Arizona State, some of you here at UC Davis, is letters of recommendation. These are important in the interview process. Who did you turn to get these? Did you have a strategy about how you were going to get close to these people that you wanted to get letters of recommendation from? Or did you just get letters from people that you seemed to naturally kind of like fall in line with?
Definitely the latter. I didn't go at my letters of recommendation with some specific strategy. I mean, I needed to get a letter, but I wasn't going to get it from somebody who I knew their material wasn't stuff I wanted to do research in or I wasn't interested in. So I got letters of recommendation from people that I did research for that I was truly interested in. I did some research in human memory here at UC Davis, and so I got some letters of recommendation from that, people I worked with, organizations I volunteered for, physicians that I've shadowed many times. It was kind of a mix of things, but definitely go for the natural connection strategy. That's going to make sure that your letter is the highest quality. And be careful if there's any connections that are, I know for me, sometimes I shadowed my family members, and so although I may have wanted to get a letter of recommendation from them, that would not work whatsoever. So it does need to be somebody who's not related to you at all. So.
I went to UC Irvine, so I had 400 student-sized classes. How do you get to know your professor? They tell you go to office hours, and guess what? I didn't. So, right, like the summer before I was going to graduate, I don't know any of my science professors very well, and that was completely my own fault. It takes effort and courage and initiative to get to know your professors. So do that, because you don't want to be about to graduate and not know your professors very well. And so the quarter right before I was about to graduate, that's when I went to office hours. And I mean, it was last minute, which isn't recommended, but I got it done. So just take the effort, because you want a letter from someone who knows you well enough and not just a generic, this person took my class.
Yeah, I think it's very easy getting letters from research advisors or people who've supervised you in outside activities that you've done. But those science professor letters are pretty challenging sometimes if you've only taken really large classes. I think if you're early on in the pre-med process, try to find some small classes that you can take where you'll have the opportunity to get to know the professor on a more personal level. But yeah, so for me, I picked professors who I sort of got to know, and which the class size was relatively small. But for example, one of my classes, though, I hadn't spoken to the professor for over 2 years, but I had gotten to know her pretty well when I'd taken the class. And what I ended up doing, and what I did for all my letter writers actually, was just to compile a packet of information for them, which had it had my personal statement, a few other things like my transcript, my things that I did in that class, and actually went into their office hours, sat down, talked to them a little bit about what my interest in medicine is all about. And I also included like a self-addressed stamped envelope
Nice.
in that packet too. So I would say try to make their job as easy as possible. They probably receive a lot of letter requests. If you can keep everything organized for them, there's a better chance that that letter will actually get to the right place.
Sorry, I just have a question for all of you guys. Did your schools have pre-med committees?
No pre-med committee, so just letter packets.
So you had to assemble all of your own letters?
Davis used to, but then when I was going through the process, they didn't anymore. So.
Okay, because I went to a school that had a pre-med committee, so that I think simplified things a lot for me, because then I just had to get a letter to the pre-med committee, and then they would pick out who wrote the best letters and not send the really crappy ones, which is always nice. Yeah, I also think that I probably had a lot of problems in class, because I don't like the idea of just buddying up to someone because you think that they're going to write you a letter of recommendation, but maybe that's because I knew all of my professors because I bugged them so much all throughout undergrad. So I don't know. I wouldn't try to like be friendly to your professor just for the letter of recommendation. I think that you really want a letter from somebody that you click with and who really gets what you're about.
So I guess I was a little worried about it when I was doing my application. But I think as you go through the process itself, you'll realize you have more connections than you realize. Definitely. I mean, you'll realize you have a lot of natural connections. You do any kind of research, you're stuck with them. I mean, you can talk to them. They'll definitely help you out. Small classes definitely help. I think I lucked out a bit in that regard because engineering classes here at Davis were a little smaller than the biology. That's a given. So just go for the small classes. Try to make that connection with your professors. But don't force it. I mean, you'll realize at the end of 4 years, I wasn't trying to get recommendations for 4 years. I didn't even really think about it until 4th year. And hopefully I scraped together some decent recommendations. I didn't get to read them, obviously. But I think it works out in the end.
I just wanted to add, they do expect it. Your professors, it's part of their job to write letters for the students, and so you don't want to go in with a nonchalant attitude. You need to honestly be interested in the material, but don't be ashamed about that you're trying to get a letter from them. They are going to expect it, and so, yeah.
Nice. Okay. One of the concerns recently is a lot of medical students that are just starting off in their first year are not fresh out of college. It used to be that you went to undergrad and then you went straight to medical school, and now the average age for a first year in medical school is older than 22, 23 years old. From your opinion, with yourself or with interacting with classmates, what are some of the things that people do in taking a year off? And do you feel like it's worth it, either for yourself or friends that you've seen?
For myself, it was definitely worth taking some time off. I graduated in '08, and now this is my first year in 2010. So I didn't do anything particularly glamorous. I did research and I worked, but it was nice to not be in the heavy pre-med basic sciences. And so it was very beneficial. I got time to spend with my family and to be more social. I wasn't very social in undergrad because I was studying so much. So it was wonderful, and I would personally recommend it because then I felt ready to get back into school, and this is what I really want to be doing, so I'm ready for it. As far as my friends, many of my friends are around 30 and have done different careers, sometimes multiple careers, and now they're in medical school, and they seem really happy as well. They are now pretty sure that this is what they want to be doing because they've tried other careers and they haven't worked out. So if it works for you, it's not a bad idea to take some time off, but if it doesn't work for you and you really want to go straight to medical school, then go for it. It's a really personal choice. Yeah.
I'm actually very similar to Aubrey. I graduated in 2008, and it's my first year in 2010. I studied for my MCAT, and the whole application process took a year in itself. Studying for the MCAT is not a reason to take time off. I worked full-time as a behavior therapist for children with autism. So that was a pretty unique profession, and it was challenging, and it was something that interviewers found interesting. So do something, that can apply to your application. I'm so happy I took 2 years off. 2 years was like the perfect number. I had my own life. I was in my 20s working, and if I go straight to medical school, I'll never be like that. And I do have classmates who are traditional, as in they went straight from undergrad. They're the minority, though. Most people do take time off. But as for the ones who went straight through, they're fine. They're mature. I respect them, even though they're younger. And as for the older ones, they seem like they've been in school. It doesn't seem like they're out of it at all. And I mean, even taking 2 years off, I thought I'd be a little bit out of it. But you get back into it. It's actually really natural. If you like being a student, it's really natural.
I took 1 year off, and I spent it at the NIH doing research. And that's something that I really wanted to do because I really, in college I did research too, but it was always a struggle between balancing classes with running into lab. And I really wanted to set aside time to really acquire those skills that you really can only get if you're working in a lab full time. I also wanted to live in a different part of the country, which I've never lived in before. And so I thought it was also like the whole process of applying to med school is a job in and of itself that it's nice not having to worry about coursework on top of that. I think that's a huge benefit of applying while you're out of school. And like you said, I really appreciate all my other classmates who have taken time off. I think they bring a very different perspective to medicine than students who had gone straight through. So I think it's a great thing to do.
I spent 2 years doing research at the NIH, and I loved it. Like, I would not have missed out on those 2 years for anything in the world. And I think that I'm probably pretty normal now for our medical school. Like, a lot of people take time off, and it just has to be right for you. Like, if there's something really interesting that you want to do, just go do it. Like, this is life, and medical school will still be there at the end of those years.
So I personally didn't take much time off, but at USIS, the diversity is incredible. And the stories, I think if you do take time off, they have some great stories. They have a different view on things. That experience really helps them out. Like if they were, so USIS, I guess, if they were combat medics or they were prior enlisted, they just see the world differently. You get a lot out of it. Some of them have families, and that really affects the way they interact with people. And you can learn a lot from people that do take that time off. So if you want to take time off, go for it.
So our pre-medical viewers want to know if there's anything that they should do the summer before they start medical school.
Try to make it relaxing. I mean, I was moving from Northern California to Southern California, so it was a long process, and it could have been more relaxing for me, so if I can emphasize having it be relaxing for you, I really am. I stopped working in June because I knew I wanted to preserve a good month and a half or so. And if you have any last desires to travel somewhere or read that book that's been sitting on your bookshelf for 5 years, maybe go for it then. I did finally read a good part of Travels with Charlie by John Steinbeck. I still haven't finished it, but I got a good way through it. So go for it. Don't review anything. Just let your mind be at rest, and you'll start medical school a lot fresher, a lot ready to get going, and yeah.
I got accepted June 24th, and orientation started July 26th. And I'm from Southern California, so I had to move all the way to Davis in a month. So I didn't have a summer before medical school, but I would have traveled if I had more time. And I actually worked all the way till July 23rd, so I didn't have much of anything. But I guess my advice, which is, I don't know if you guys are expecting this advice, pay off your credit cards. I wish I had focused more on paying off my credit cards because I'm living off loans. I'm not using loans to pay for other loans. Not the best situation.
Yeah, I would say try to earn some income too, but also have fun at the same time. Med school is a 24/7 commitment, and the summer before the summer that you start med school is one of your last summer breaks ever. So definitely take full advantage of it.
We get like 5 weeks between first and second year too. It's not your last break ever, but pretty close. So you should just do what you want.
Definitely take the break. And don't even try studying for anatomy. Just don't bother. Don't even try.
Very nice. Okay. So if you could give one piece of advice, looking back on it now, you are all in medical school, and you saw what you went through in undergrad and all the different pieces of advice I'm sure that you got from numerous different people. Is there anything that you would do different if you had to do undergrad again? If you had to go back knowing what you know now, what is one thing that you would do differently?
That's a good question. One thing is you go to these kinds of conferences and you hear so much advice. It's exhausting. And you try to apply all these ideas to yourself and maybe try changing the way you live for a week and then it doesn't work. It's difficult. It's a rigorous process, and ultimately you just need to do what works for you. You need to get your good grades, you need to do well enough on the MCAT, you need to have involvement. But beyond that, there's really no rhyme or reason. Just do what's interesting for you. And so the first couple years definitely tried to do too much of everything and was run down and was exhausted. And then the last couple years of university, I definitely narrowed my focus, and it was a lot more meaningful. That's one thing. Second thing, when you are at a big school like UC Davis or other UC campuses and OChem is 420 students, it is threatening, but don't be afraid to walk in and go sit in the front row. I sat in the front row almost every lecture, even if I was late, and the professor will notice you, so recommendation letter, but also you're right there. If you have a question, it's not embarrassing to raise your hand because you're sitting in the back. You're right there, professor's gonna see you. So take yourself seriously. You're a smart, capable person, and don't let the crowd influence you too much.
It's hard to say like what I would have changed because I've been accepted. So it's like, oh, everything must have worked out. But maybe I would have had more options if I had stronger letters of recommendation. So definitely get to know professors. I regret not knowing any of my science professors. I don't really have that many regrets. But yeah, my letters of rec weren't that strong, and I should have studied harder for my MCAT.
Yeah, there's really not much I would change about my college experience. I really enjoyed it. I would say maybe pick some sort of skill that you want to try to develop that might help you out in med school or as a physician. I think I was, at the start of college, I was a pretty shy person. I wouldn't speak out a lot in class. So that's probably something that I might have wanted to try working on before I got to med school. So maybe find something that you want to try to develop that'll help you out in med school.
I don't know. I had to retake the MCAT. I applied twice. I took the MCAT again. I could say I should have studied harder for the MCAT, but then I had this really fantastic second year of working in a job that I loved. And I don't know, all of my mistakes have actually worked out to be better than what I originally planned. So just go with it. I had a lot of existential angst that I could have just let go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess my mistakes made me who I was, for better or worse. I wouldn't take anything back, but if I did have to do something, it probably wouldn't have been medical school related. I'd probably do something that I would never have thought of doing before, like out of my comfort zone completely. Even if it's something like doing sports, which I have to do now, but I did not do in college. I mean, anything you really want to do, you should do it. Even if it's something not medically related, do now because it's a marathon, if I had to describe it.
And so we're getting to the end of our panel. And we all know that, medical school is strenuous and difficult, and pre-medical years were definitely a struggle, even though we all had fun, I'm sure, in there somewhere. But going into medical school, what was something that surprised you, something that you found, fun, or, a unique opportunity that you were only able to have, because now you're a med student? After all this struggle to get where you are, what makes you happy at the end of the day, and why are you glad that you are where you are?
One of the most enjoyable things for me is the camaraderie between my classmates and people that have worked just as hard as you have, some people more, some people less, but everybody's got an interesting story. Everybody's really smart. You're no longer the smartest one in your class at all. And so that's been really enjoyable to experience, though. And so the camaraderie. And for me, I didn't realize how invigorating I would actually find the basic sciences. Okay, I'm a couple months into my first year, so I may not have the same opinion at the end of my first year, but I really love science. I was a personal trainer for a while before I did medical school, and I was always wondering, what's really going on here? And now, just in the past 2 months of medical school, I already understand so much, and it's amazing. And I feel really grateful to be where I am and have the influence in people's lives. Before, I was just helping them with their fitness, and now I can help them for life or death issues. And so I feel really invigorated, and I didn't expect to feel that way. But again, I'm in my second or third month, so I hope to have that same attitude at the end of the year.
For me, my MCATs and my GPAs, based on national averages, I'm probably below average, just truthfully. And what's been nice is that doesn't really reflect how I'm doing in medical school. Like, I'm probably, my GPA and MCAT scores are probably not as good as my classmates, but it's a fresh start, and I'm doing just as good, if not better, than my classmates. So don't think your capability, your academic capability, is set in stone. You're not going to be the same place in your class for medical school as you were in undergrad. And what's nice is UC Davis is really about patient-centered care. They're really about understanding your patient and listening to your patient and respecting your patient, and they've emphasized that in the past 2 months a lot for our class. And it's just nice, like refreshing to hear physicians who really care about their patients and want the future generations of physicians to care about patients.
I would say being a med student makes watching shows like House or Grey's Anatomy way more interesting. It's just ridiculous how much ridiculous stuff goes on in those shows. All joking aside, I would say I've really been struck by just how much responsibility and what a privilege it's been to be a med student. Even in my second year, I'll walk into a patient's room and they'll start just unloading all these problems that they've been dealing with for the past few years on me, and they'll just break down to tears in front of me. And I think just being a med student itself, you're just given so much privilege that it's really, really an exciting ride.
For me, I don't know if this is anybody else's experience, but being a med student is hilarious. Like, if you have a good sense of humor, this is a great job for you. Because I think we're just on the other side of a lot of taboos. So just so many more ridiculous things happen to us than the average person. Like, you'll have your hands in so many places that hands were never supposed to go. And I think that if you just, like, pick the funny people in your class and hang out with them, you're going to have such a good time in medical school.
I think it was a nice change, just the camaraderie in general, people helping you out and your classmates. They're competing with you, but they'll help you out. I got some of that in engineering. We did a lot of group work. I made a lot of good friends because after 3 days of no sleeping, you kind of make friends with the guy next to you. But medical school is like that all the time from day one, and you're definitely, I've already made a lot of friends in med school, and I think they'll last, hopefully.
Right. All right. Well, thank you to our panelists for being with us, taking time out of their schedule and their free, safe time for their sanity. And thank all of you for joining us. And that's it.